Ladies and gentlemen, from MOD Entertainment, I have Shadow. Tell everybody where you grew up.
I grew up in North Hollywood, the San Fernando Valley, city of NH. You know, almost by where you could say Gil grew up as well.
Shout out Gil, yeah. Eric and Cholo.
Yeah, so I grew up right there in the San Fernando Valley. You know, pretty much stayed in the city of North Hollywood, almost in my neighborhood. You know, born and raised in my neighborhood. I stayed there pretty much until my mid-teens, and then we had moved to the city of Arleta, which is like 2 cities down from North Hollywood, like about 15 minutes on bike, so still relevantly close.
Okay.
The San Fernando Valley is the only place I ever stayed in and resided, and you know, that was my stomping ground.
Talk to us about what your upbringing was like.
Well, I grew up in a pretty chaotic home. You know, I grew up without a father. I had my mother, but my mother, you know, was single young because she had me when she was 13. So
Wow.
obviously she was young. So, you know, and, you know, she was kind of a knucklehead, you know, so she wasn't ready for, you know, to be a mother yet. We grew up in the same household. It was my grandpa, my grandma, my mom, and her three brothers and my aunt. We all lived in the same household, and they're all from my neighborhood. You know what I mean? They're all from my barrio, including my dad. You know, who I ended up meeting later on. You know, in the picture. But so you know, pretty much we lived in the hood, and you know, as it is, you already have like 5 members of that neighborhood in one household. So all the homies would come and kick it you know, at the house. So the house was getting shot up, and when they would come looking for us, they would hit our house. You know what I mean? So it was like pretty much a chaotic environment growing up. You know what I mean? You know, like pretty much how you see in the movies, but instead, like, you know, we were actually really living it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is all I know. Like, I know there's other people that when they get into neighborhoods, you know, like maybe they meet some homies that already gangbang or something like that. But I was born into it. You know what I mean? Like, the homies were all I ever knew. Like I pretty much seen them just like my own, like that. Every birthday party, every quinceañera or wedding, whatever, they were always there. They were always there, and they were there, you know, Monday through Sunday. So it's like I pretty much, you know, grew up knowing everybody. You know, considering because from my mom's side, it's her 3 brothers and my aunt that are from my neighborhood, and from my dad's side, it's him, his brother, and his 3 cousins who are from my neighborhood. So that makes it like a total of like, I have like a total, and then my cousins, so I have like a total of like maybe like 12 family members that are from my neighborhood. So like literally, like when we have a get together, it's like it's having like a family, like it's like having like a gang meeting.
Talk to me about the San Fernando Valley.
The San Fernando Valley is definitely, was very chaotic, growing up, you know, I grew up in the 80s. Well, I was born in the 80s, grew up in roughly in the 90s. It was when gangbanging was at its peak. You know, that's when everybody was active. You know, everybody was like, not like right now, how, you know, pretty much, you know, cops, you know, sweeping up people and stuff like that. Well, back then, all these neighborhoods were in their prime, you know, like right now, maybe some neighborhoods, you know, because they have gotten hit with RICOs and sweeps and all of this. But back then, it was like everybody was like, you know, at full capacity. So you can only imagine how chaotic it was, because I remember when we were feuding with the enemies, because we beef it with a lot of neighborhoods. My neighborhood in itself, we maybe beef it with like 33 other gangs that are like really close to us. You know what I mean? We beef it with almost everybody in North Hollywood except for North Hollywood locals. So, you know, and so it was on and cracking. So there was days where we would get hit like multiple times by like different neighborhoods, and then we would go. So it was like, you know, like they were running up, you know, like 3 to 4 times a day, you know what I mean?
Damn.
And it's like, so like you knew, you being posted in the block or going anywhere, you were going to get, you know, like you were going to have to throw blows because they were coming to get you guys today. Because the thing is that my neighbors, like roughly at the time, was one of the newer ones. So these other guys felt like they could just like punk us or, you know, like they want to like pretty much, you know, seem like they're superior, you know, than us. So obviously they don't like it when we don't bow down. So it puts that, how could I say that, more of a let's go looking for these guys, you know what I mean? Because like they don't like it that, you know, we don't bow down. You know, it's essentially why we started beefing it with a lot of these neighborhoods, because a lot of these neighborhoods were hoping to like consume the neighborhood, like, you know, join, you know, either join them or there's gonna be beef. And it's like, well, then there's beef, bro. You know, but yeah, growing up, it was very chaotic. It was definitely cracking. You know, there was a lot of homicides, shootings, and all kinds of shit. You know what I mean? It was definitely like South Central or like Compton. You know, I know when people think about the San Fernando Valley, you know, they think of like maybe Burbank or Tarzana. You know what I mean? Like, there's only like certain parts of the San Fernando Valley that's nice. You know what I mean? Maybe like 3 cities out of everything else. Because if you go to Pacoima, North Hollywood, Panorama, North Hills, Van Nuys, you know, you have, you know, a gang of neighborhoods and pretty much everyone's feuding with each other. Like, it's rare you'll have a neighborhood who doesn't beef it with multiple other neighborhoods. You know, it's like, it was pretty much, you know, it was like, our shit's the best shit and everybody else is beneath us. So we thought we were the shit. So like, you know, anywhere you would go, and if a neighbor would try to press you, you're not gonna want to. You're not gonna bow down. You know what I mean? So you're gonna want to seem like you're the alpha. And when 2 individuals come together and you know they both want to be the alpha, you're gonna get issues. You know what I mean? Because neither side's gonna want to look like the ones that folded. So you're gonna get you know, all kinds of shit.
How old were you when you officially jumped off the porch?
I was saying I was out there when I was like maybe like 11, 10. But I didn't. It didn't become official till I was 13, like 12, 13. I was about to be 13.
Hypothetically, if you could talk to a 12-year-old you, a 12-year-old Shadow, what would you tell him?
I would tell him that, you know, I know it's not perfect, you know, your situation, but your mom and dad do love you. They just have their own problems. You know, they don't know how to cope with their problems, you know, but they do care. They just have a hard time showing it, you know. So don't think that, you know, you don't fit in, or you're not wanted, or you know, you were just some accident, or you're not a burden, you know? Because I think our like how we feel before we get into these neighborhoods or whatever, you know, our overall bond, you know, in our household, you know, we feel like the black sheep of the family. Like, you know, we're misunderstood. No one really gives a fuck about us, you know, like, you know, there's a whole lot of shit going on, you know, behind the scenes in the household, personal, you know, other homies suffer from all kinds of shit, you know, molestations to, you know, torture, to all kinds of shit, you know. No one really knows what happens behind those closed doors. So I would pretty much break down the whole scenario behind all of that, you know, because my childhood had more, you know, rough patches in it, you know, but I'm still not emotionally ready to dive into those, you know. I'm still working on that on myself, you know, through therapy. You know, trying to cope with it all, you know. That's why I tell people it's important to get therapy.
Thank you for
there's
saying
nothing,
that.
There's nothing wrong with that. Like,
you're not a punk.
Yeah, you know, like we all have issues, you know, and that's to say most people go their life not wanting to admit that, or not wanting to go and seek out help. And that's why they spiral out of control, you know. It's okay to ask for help, you know what I mean? We don't all have like strong wills like others, you know, we're all different, you know. People have their strengths, they have their weaknesses, and that's perfectly fine. It's normal, you know, because there's no such thing as perfection, you know. So although what people may be stronger than you in some stuff, like have a stronger mindset, whenever you have something that you're better than them at, you know, so we all have our strengths and weaknesses. It's okay to ask for help. And, you know, and I know how important it is, you know, that these individuals felt like, you know, there was no communication, no connection, or nobody to even hear them out, you know. And especially, you know, at that age, you know, kids are not really so comfortable talking about all their, you know, emotions as it is. But I think if he knew that I was him, but like an older him, he would probably understand, you know. I think just hammering that probably would make a difference, in my opinion.
You have a video titled "The Message of My Channel." Can you break down what made you start your channel and what your mission is with your channel?
Well, essentially, when I first started my channel, it was to promote my music, right? I do music along with several other individuals, that, we rap and stuff. So essentially, it was to push our music. But as we're pushing our music, people wanting to get to know, the man behind, I guess, the music or the channel, So they started asking questions like, who are you? Like, where you from? And so I started doing videos, breaking that down instead of, having to write in the comments, like explaining everything, I just started doing videos, and people just started asking pretty much questions like after that. And then at the time I wasn't so into YouTube. So then I started scoping out YouTube, and I started seeing that other people had platforms as well, but they were using their platforms for, to give their opinions and, speak their minds and stuff like that. And at the time I noticed that there was more negative out there than positive, and a whole lot of I don't want to say lies, but misleading people. Yeah, actually being from the streets and really how it is, I knew that this is wrong, you know what I mean? And not only that, why are you trying to mislead people? Especially one coming from the streets, and how it is, why would you try to mislead these people to want to be a part of some shit that that costs you all kinds of grief and headaches and all kinds of shit, you know what I mean? Because you're not gonna get nothing positive out of it. It's people should already remember all the times, being locked up or being chased by the cops or getting lit up and not knowing if you're gonna live. Every time you hit the block, potentially that could be your last day on earth, and we all know this. You know what I mean? Every time you go out there, potentially enemies gonna roll up, and bullets have no names. Once they go, and whoever it hits, it hits. So, it's a suicide. It's a suicidal lifestyle, because every homie knows this, that when you're out there posted, that the enemy's going to come and, potentially, you're going to get shot or some shit, or end up, doing some big time. So, for people to try to mislead individuals to think that you get, because I was hearing a whole lot oh yeah, we get racks and money and women and it's no, you don't, bro. Who the fuck are you kidding? I see the music videos. Don't get me wrong. I see, but go to the neighborhood on any fucking given day. You're not gonna see lowriders. You're not gonna see girls walking in booty shorts and money falling from the sky. You're not gonna see none of that shit. You're not gonna see all these fools all fly. You're gonna see them broke as hell, sharing a 211 tall can, you know what I mean? And come on, all that shit is a facade, and not only that, you're misleading youngsters to think that, especially a young individual, that's what they're attracted to. They're attracted to the glamour and all of that. Oh damn! So you're telling me if I become these gangster rapper, I could have these women and money, and you know what I mean? And it's why are you trying to portray that? That's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. That's why I mess with you, dog. That's why I mess with you, man. That's the message that we need to put out there, that what these kids are seeing on TV is not reality. What they're seeing on their phones is not reality, dog.
Yeah, and me, knowing the music aspect to it and all of that, I know how it works. I know that, how the money's up-fronted. A lot of these people don't know that. Most of these rappers, let's say, they signed with a record deal, or with a record label, right? And they're signed to let's say 5 years, 3 albums or whatever. So they fronted the money. They asked them, you want the money up front. So they fronted the money. Now that company is lending you that money, going based off what they think your albums are gonna sell. So let's just say if you don't meet your margin or whatever, now you're in debt. If you blew that money, now you owe these guys that money. You know what I mean? So they don't have it how they claim. Not only that, for these videos, you could rent jewelry, you could rent out Lambos.
Oh man.
Yeah, it doesn't even cost that much to do it. You know what I mean? It literally, anybody that if you have a 9 to 5, you could rent a Lambo for a few hours. You know what I mean? And it's not that expensive. So a music video, let's just say, for example, especially they'll give you a discount because you're advertising their product, on your stuff. So like they see it as, so all these people, they're seeing all of this shit, but it's like, and it's not even for me to like, because when I say that, people be like, oh, you're just hating or you just mad. And it's like, bro, I'm just telling you how it is. There's no reason for me. There ain't no hate in my heart. You know what I mean? But I know what it is. I know when these people are trying to make, and time after time after time, has it not come out that these guys really ain't gangsters like how they say that they are? Because
always getting exposed.
Yeah, because, and we know this for a fact because we know real individuals do not carry themselves like that. Real individuals don't holler this, and that, and want to impress people by, tricking them to thinking that they're tough or crazy. Like, bro, like when you've been in this life, like you're comfortable with your skin, you're comfortable in what you have done. So there's no reason for you to put up no fronts or why you should worry about any other people's opinions because you know what you're capable of because you know what you have done, And so can nobody take that from you. And those who really come from this life know that, you know what I mean? Because obviously, those who have done real things, individuals are aware of it. So despite what anybody's going to want to say, the real ones know what it is. So you don't got to prove yourself to nothing. The ones that talk is because they know they don't have no credibility. They know that nobody could vouch for them. So they have to constantly put up this front because that's all they have, that's all they can stand on.
Yeah. You reminded me of something that Boosie said. Legendary rapper Boosie was on a Vlad TV interview not too long ago.
I've seen that one.
Yeah, and he said that it's impossible to be an active gangbanger and an entertainer. He said there's no way you can have one foot in the street and one foot on stage. Would you agree with that?
I partially agree with that. I mean, it could be done, but the reason why they say that you can't is because 9 times out of 10 it's gonna blow up in your face, and the reason for that is because if you're constantly out there, then you know that you're putting yourself, if you're out there all the damn time and really, pedal to the metal like how you say you are, then you have a higher chance than any other homeboy on the block of getting shot or doing, some time because you're out there more than them. You know what I mean? So your chances are greater. And the thing is that there's some rappers, I guess you could say, who, okay, if this is the image that they portray or say, now they got to live up to it. Now they got to own that, because that's what they be claiming and that they are. So now they get, people, they know that they're being watched. So, they decide to, really be out there like how they say that they are. And really you're pretty much, you're going at 100 and something miles per hour and just into a straight wall, like you're self-destructing. You don't even realize it because you're trying to portray this image of what you claim that you are, you know what I mean? And all this super tough talk, now people are going to want to really see if that's true or not. And that's what a lot of these guys do that claim to be like really out there like that. Like, there's homies that are active, whatever. They don't ever have to say it, you know what I mean? They don't ever have to say that they're out there all the time or, you know what I mean? They don't got to be telling anybody none of that shit. But the ones that do that is because they just want attention. So, those rapping artists that do that put themselves in these predicaments because, they want to be seen like, the image that they're portraying, that they end up getting themselves in a jam, and just to try to keep the facade going. And that's why they get, smoked. So that's why people say that, you really can't do both. But it's not that. It's just that they're not using their brain. You know what I mean? Their common sense. Pretty much.
As a person yourself who does street related content and things like that, what are some of the responsibilities that you feel that you have, and what makes your channel different from other channels with similar content?
I try not to glorify it. Now, glorify meaning tell battle stories of these neighborhoods, glorifying their crimes like it's one of the most downest things I have ever witnessed. The most crazy is, these guys right here are well respected because of their ruthlessness. All that shit you're doing is you're pretty much you're polluting a youngster's mind to think that oh man, so if I join these gangs, I could be one of the most feared and respected, when they do that kind of stuff. So I tend not to dive into, stories, behind the neighborhood. I talk about the history of the neighborhood locations, never about the acts they committed or, personal missions and stuff like that, because that is glorifying it. You know what I mean? When you talk about stuff like that, not only that, but you're gonna other people are gonna take it, the wrong way as well. Like you're trying to be talking about how you smashing on their neighborhood, making your neighborhood seem more superior. It's like that macho thing. Like try to make your side seem like you're the craziest and downest, and that nobody says gangster as you, and like it's all a ego stroke when people do that. And it's like they can't see it, and then they want to justify it after by saying that um oh yeah, but I'm not promoting this and nothing like that. Like, bro, you just spend the whole entire damn video glorifying it, and then you want to end it by saying that, and then like if it's okay, like okay.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. It's like that's pretty much your backup car. Oh no, I mentioned how you shouldn't be doing that,
Yeah, for 3 seconds, right out of the 30.
Yeah, hey, when you spend like 20 minutes, and and I know that that's the thing you get from it, because I remember when I was a youngster coming up, and the older homies will roll up to the neighborhood, and we were hearing their, oh yeah, I remember when we caught the enemies, and they're telling their stories, and I remember like I was pumping us up, and it's like, hell yeah, that's some gangster shit, and then me and the homies that were roughly around, my age, hey homie, let's go bust a mission and try to top that shit, and so I remember the mind state that that hearing that kind of stuff gives, maybe not to 30-year-olds or like 25-year-olds and stuff like that, who obviously already know better, but to those who are younger, like 13, 14, 15, who are still thinking that they know everything and they got this shit in the bag and can nobody tell them nothing. Yeah, that shit's gonna encourage them to go out there and do all these things. So I try to steer away from that. But school on how it really is, for if those, because you can't save everybody, you know what I mean, there's going to be those individuals, well, at least if you're going to go down this path and this is what you should be expecting and this is how it is, that way at least now heads up, that way you don't trim your life any shorter than what you're already trimming it, because you're pretty much walking through a minefield now.
Yeah
Because I say that no matter what we say as individuals, we could give a youngster the best advice in the world, right? We could give them the best advice, encourage them always, and steer them down the right path. But if they're going home to a household that's chaotic, and the people that they look up to the most in this world, because that's always going to be our parents, nobody's going to be able to top them, in our eyes when it comes to being, our role models and who we look up to. If they are not in their child's life, if they don't care, if they neglect, if they just don't give a flying fuck, then no matter what advice we give that youngster or what we tell that youngster, it's all flying out the window once he reaches that household and all the chaos is going on.
Wow.
Because they're not gonna, even though you're telling them that the feeling and stuff like that, they're, when they're at that age, they're just not gonna care. They're gonna be like, nah, you don't understand, because a teenager really thinks that he has it in the bag. He knows everything, So if he says that you don't understand this, even though you're telling him that you do, his mind is set that you don't understand, and you don't live with these people that who you love, and they don't show you the same emotions back, and they're gonna pretty much be enraged and go do what they're gonna go do just to ease the pain, and that's why I tell people on my channel, one of the main messages that I try to push is how important it is to be a parent, how important it is to be in your kid, and I mean in your child's life, not, I don't mean by buying them stuff or tablets and iPhones. And that's not what I mean when I say be a parent. When I mean be a parent is like, get into their hobbies. What do they like? What kind of music they hear? Play board games together. Go out there and play sports together. Interact with each other where you're having conversations while, doing something together, building up a chemistry and a bond and a friendship where now they feel comfortable that they could tell you, everything, and they could come to you with their problems. And even when they do come with you with some problems, to never yell, never yell and insult them and call them names, because that's not fixing the situation. It's not making anything better. You know what I mean?
And don't
because
beat their ass over any. Don't.
Yeah, and don't beat because imagine if I get my ass whooped for spilling the Kool-Aid. Imagine when I come with a real problem, like they're gonna think that you're gonna kill them. Even though that you wouldn't do that, whatever. Kids, when they're going through puberty and all these new thoughts, come into their head, they don't really know what you're gonna do or not do.
Bro.
So, when you're doing that, you're applying fear into your child, and that's not a good thing, when they're terrified of you. And I think that that's what a lot of, parents were doing back then, that was a mistake. They think by whipping the kids that they'll turn perfect or whatever. Or when people try to say, oh, well, see, these kids need an ass whooping. I got an ass whooping. See, that's why I'm not as disrespectful as them. Like, yeah, you're not as disrespectful, but you still were not perfect. You still created all kinds of errors,
Exactly.
Like, so, I think people forget that.
Yeah, I would bet that, unfortunately, most people who are spending time in jail or prison, they probably got their ass beaten as a kid.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
So that
for sure.
It's like, that's not the.
Oh, yeah, back in our time, ooh, that was, my boy, it was rare a homie didn't get his ass whooped. Like, what? You don't get your ass whooped? Man, you ain't G.
Yeah.
Nah, homies were really getting their asses, them Mexican, moms, man, they ain't playing, bro.
Yeah. That chunk like some real shit, bro.
Oh, yeah, bro. They cocked that sucker back, bro. When they used to throw the chancla, I sort of God, it was able to bend the corner. Like
some boomerang shit on.
Yeah, serious. One of the main problems that I think, my cultura has, Mexicans were very prideful, right? So Mexican men grow up to be machistas, right? We're these badasses, like we run the household, and we don't show no lovey-dovey emotions to our kids. That shit is weak. You're gonna make them weak like that. They're gonna be soft. You're raising a man here, and it's like, bro, that's not a good way to raise a child by not, displaying no emotions towards that child. You're gonna really think that you don't feel nothing for him, and I think that's why a lot of individuals, unfortunately, who are, Mexican or Latino, tend to either, join gangs or cartels or be drug lords or whatever. And why the murder rate is so sky high in Mexico, and why a lot of these individuals, choose a life of crime, because you're raising them, without these emotions, pretty much, numbing their emotions and, hardening in their heart, And like I said, a kid needs affection by his parents. He needs to be, loved, be told, that you love him and that you're proud of him, and that, all kinds of stuff like that. You know what I mean? Just be enthusiastic, in his achievements and really be in his life and care about what he really does, because unfortunately I see a lot when a kid comes and tells a homie something and he's like, I'll go over there. I'll go later. And it's like, bro, pay attention to your kid, bro. He comes all with a big old smile. Eventually he's going to come to a point where they catch on, and then they just stop coming and telling you anything. And then that's why you get those kids that are just isolated on their tablets, and there's no communication between the parents. Like, yeah, you're in the kid's life because you're there in the household, but it's like if you're not even there because you're not paying attention to him, and you're pretty much just buying the clothes on his back and giving him a roof over his head, but you're not in his life. You're not being a parent. Buying stuff, anybody can fucking do that. It's about the other stuff, and this is even better because it doesn't even cost anything.
Yep.
You know, and it's like, I get it. We're all tired from work when we get home, and but that's your child, bro. That's your child. You know what I mean? And people will say that they'll do anything for their kids, right? And like, oh, I'll do anything for my kid. Exactly. I get it that you're tired and everything, but go out there and play, you know, I'm not saying all day, but just like at least an hour, you know, but have some interaction. You're like, that's your kid, bro. And it's important. You know, I don't stress it enough of how much I say how important it is to build a bond with your child, because I feel if you build a bond with your child won't want to turn to the streets. He won't need to why to look, you know, at the streets for comfort or family or any of that. You know what I mean? And so these kids won't want to become gang members. So then these gangs that are already out there, you know, these individuals get old. You know, they either retire or die of old age or whatever. So then they don't have no one to recruit. So then these gangs just die out, because if none of these kids want to become gang members, then these gangs, they just wither out. You know, and I think that's why it's important to be in your kids' life. You know, but if you think that it's not important, oh, who gives a damn, or what could a few words, you know, how could a few words make such a difference? Like, well, that's the reason why it's 2022, ladies and gentlemen, and we still have gangs. Yeah, that whole if you get into a gang, you could die, or those guys are losers. They live with them. It's not working, bro.
Nope.
It's not working. The insult ain't working, and yet the answer's so simple. Just communicating with your child. But it's one of the things that I see that a lot of people don't really like to do. Like when individuals tell me like, hey, my kid's birthday's coming up. Oh, what is he like? Well, I don't even know. Like, how do you not know? Like, that's your fucking kid, bro. Like, come on now. Man. Like, come on, like, be in the kid's life, like, you know. And I think that people care more about the, you know, how they might look, you know, to other individuals. Like, when I'm at the park, I'm out here playing tag, I'm playing, you know, with the kids running around. I don't give a fuck what the world thinks of me, you know. They can say like, well, look at that adult, whatever. And my kids are having a blast, they have a smile on. I could give a fuck about what anybody thinks.
Hell yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that, because that's how, you know, like, that's your kid. Like, his feelings should come before anybody else's. Like, fuck how the other people might see you. Like, how's your kid gonna see you? So who would you rather please, these strangers or your child? You make the choice,
bro.
But then don't complain when they turn out to be, you know, from the streets and shit like that. Because when people want to, you know, finally, how could I say, pay attention to their kid, by then it's already too late. Like we don't wake up when they become gang members. It's not like they fell asleep one day, straight A student, you know, at 12, and then the next day he wakes up and he decides to throw his life away and get into a gang and you know, and go downhill from there. It's a process, right? It's a process of him slowly, you know, going down that route. So it's like, how did you not notice that your child was going down that path? Like, what were you doing this whole entire time that you didn't pick up the difference in his clothing, in his apparel, in his attitude, his demeanor? You know, like people notice until once they're already in and they've been from the gang for like already a while. You know what I mean? Or when they get locked up, like, oh, he's in a gang. You're in a gang? Like, oh, how did you not know? You know, like, come on now. You know, like, no one's really that dumb. Like, either you're not paying attention or what's happening, you know, because it's not like, you know, and I get it. Oh, it's his friends. Yeah, but this shit didn't happen overnight. You know, what was you doing? Who's the parent, them or you? Who has the authority? You're telling me you can't stop your 13-year-old? It's Saturday night. It's 2 in the morning. You don't know what your fucking kid is at, and it's no big deal until he ends up body bagged.
Dog, thank you for sharing your story and talking about your life and your channel. I truly appreciate you. I respect what you do, and I wish you nothing but success. Please tell everybody where they can find you, man, and anything that you got coming up. The floor is yours.
Oh, well, check me out on MOD Entertainment right here on YouTube. I have a second channel, Man of Society MOD, where we talk about stuff outside of the streets. And yeah, pretty much just right here, you know, subscribe, you know, view the channel, you know, all the views and subscribe, you know, I would appreciate it. You know what I mean? Getting my channel out into the algorithm, you know, that way the message, you know, could travel, you know, further. And I want to thank you for, you know, allowing me to come on here and, you know, speak my mind, bro. I appreciate that.
Appreciate you, dog. I'm gonna definitely stay in touch with you, man, and hope to meet you one day in person. And you stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you soon. All right.
All right. Likewise, bro.
Peace, man.